Hello, friends.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome to My Invisible Disease podcast. We are here to share our struggles and hacks as two moms living with chronic illness.
Tune in and join our community as we share stories and experiences while we sort through the ups and downs of living with invisible disease. How long have we known each other?
So like 14 years ago.
Yeah. So it's been a long time.
I can tell that because of my dog's age.
Right? Oh, that's a whole nother podcast episode right there. Let me tell you what I did, and you can judge my parenting after that. We've been friends for 14 years. That's a long time.
I'm not rehearsed in sharing this story because it's kind of been, because for me, this wasn't dramatically progressed, but I knew it was coming for years. So I think I spent my life avoiding, of masking to not show this side of me, I didn't want people thinking of me as sick, and it's and it was so easy because it's invisible disease and it's easy to hide when you're tired. And I'm not well versed in this story because it's not something that is shared. And I think there's something when you're dealing with shit like this, you feel like it's a burden to share your struggle. And And I really have come into my own. And so then I see people going through this where it's they're getting hit with it. And it's there is this other, there's so much more to us than just our physical experience, that it's, it just because you're going through some of these big challenges in our regular day-to-day life world, but that there's still space for joy. There's still space for gratitude. There's still space for, be able to heal. And it just isn't always, in my case, which I'm sure I'll get there when I have to heal from, big surgeries, that type of thing. But where it's been a lot more internal and has really been something, that's helped so much to navigate, the landscape of chronic illness and some of the pieces of it, which now I'm heavily in, which you're heavily in, is parenting with chronic illness, the day-to-day life of being fucking exhausted and trying to manage work, a household, your kids. And I think that's part of with this, My Invisible Disease podcast is kind of really what we want to share is not only how we're managing it, but that we're also in the fucking thick of it. We're struggling, and it's okay to struggle. Where through sharing your struggles, finding connection, finding community, it's different than complaining. And like I say, it's so weird because I'm probably missing a million things in the story of shit I've been through, because it's just, you just take it as you go. I mean, I probably had 50 doctor's appointments this summer leading up to the transplant assessment. But it's one step in front of the other, one step at a time. And I think
there's this quote, and I might be messing it up because I always misquote everything. But as somebody who is now in the middle of uncontrolled, there's so many things that I cannot control. But what I can control is how I handle it. And what I can control is how I talk about it and how I advocate for myself and how I can let people help me. So I can decide whether or not I'm going to sit at home and, just cry in my bed about all of the things that I can't do. But what I can do is I can, stock up on coloring books. So days that I can't get out of bed, we can snuggle in bed, watch movies and color. Or, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you deal with it.
Absolutely.
And I think that for us, we just need to keep doing what we're doing and supporting each other and knowing that we're not alone in this. There's a lot of people and our communities that we surround ourselves with is how we're going to get through it.
Well, and I think it's just not something that means it's still it just blows my mind. Trigger words like gut health, mental health, these things were, 10 years ago, not even on the table. But I still feel especially for women, that it's not the struggles is not something people talk about. I'm on the other side and I'm going to share my story. That's great. and I think that can be inspiring, but like there's a community of women that are in the thick of it, that are dealing with, and whether it's invisible for you or not. I mean, I say it's invisible, like my physically, I mean, we both shared physically, our bodies have changed, like, but you know, how I present myself to the world, like people probably have no idea that I'm sick. And
okay, well, they can tell that I'm a little hurting, but they assume it's leg day. So like crawling up the stands at hockey on Saturday, I was like, oh, look at me.
Yeah.
They can see. They just don't want to ask.
It's part of your new routine. Like, you know what I mean? And that's it. And people are afraid to ask, and people are afraid to have these conversations. And I think women naturally mask it. We hide it. It's somehow associated with failure. Our bodies are failing us, like we're failures, or, you know, like the guilt of not being able to do it all, even though no one can do it all, no matter how healthy they are. But also like the shame for, like, why is this, there's this cloud of shame. And I think, you know, it's being able to reclaim this space of ditching the guilt, of ditching the shame, of you know, finding that, and like we kind of mentioned this too before, talk about empowerment of, and advocating for yourself and for the things you can control. You know, I have spent years with like here and there with different doctors, and I advocate for myself for medications, for like different things. I also advocate for myself, like you said, a lot more on the natural world side of things, because I think everything's holistic. And I think, you know, absolutely clearly Western medicine, I need a transplant. Like that is 100% something that's going to feed me on my journey, but that there's also room to do some of the work or some healing, or you know, ways to explore a holistic aspect of these things. And that is also coming to the mental, the emotional, the spiritual side of it. And I think as women, you know, that is such a big driver in our lives, and chronic illness can be so consuming. But creating a space where, you know, to connect with other people going through this shit and having shitty ass days where they don't want to get out of bed, or they can't get out of bed, and you have the guilt of your kids knocking on the door waiting for breakfast. Like, you know what? It's part of life. This is our human experience. And there's a whole whack of women, like statistically, chronic illness is on the rise. Like it's not declining. Like this is becoming something that's more and more prevalent in people's lives. But I mean, I'm excited with you even just to talk about, like, you know, how this affects relationships, how it affects parenting. You know, we're both on our journeys. We're not on the other side. Like,
yeah, this is not a situation where we get to laugh about, oh, remember back in the day? Like I look forward to those days. Like I was saying to Jesse, like
our spa trip that we
have a to-do list here, but I was saying to Jesse, I'm like, once again, because the guilt of a spouse, it's like, we're going to get through this. We're going to, you know, be on the other side of this, and like worrying about these tests and that test. Like we're going to look back and be like, that was crazy. Like we went through some shit. And I can't wait until this is behind us. But the reality of the situation is like, we don't know. I'm completely undiagnosed as of today. I'm on a ton of medication treating something. And it's probably going to be my whole life based on like where they're leaning. And it's just how it is. Like,
it is.
How
what
are we
it
going to get through this?
I say this all the time. As a community. And that is how we get through it. Like, you know, and that's insane. It's like liver transplant, fucking huge thing. Okay, that happens. I still need a kidney transplant. Like, you know, it's like what? I thought I just
still have to get the transplant.
I'm on the other side, right? So it's like, yeah, you know, it's a journey, and it is very much like mapping out those pit stops that are harder than others, but also, you know, keeping ourselves accountable for our own mental health. And sometimes we need help with that. Sometimes we need support. Sometimes we need inspiration to get us through. But yeah, I think that's also why we are doing this, for,
it's true.
You know, my invisible disease.
When we were like sitting in the car that day, like crying because I'm not going to go for a hike, and like how sad I was going to be. Like I couldn't take my kids for like a walk to look at leaves. Like if you have a 3 or 5 year old, you know that like leaves and sticks, so at least in our house, are like the coolest thing you can find. And like that day, like it's all I could think about. Like, we're not going for a fall walk this year. And that fucking sucks. Like they're not going to like smell that fall morning, like smell that we love. They're not going to be, I'm not getting down there to take pictures of mushrooms or frogs or, you know, like that was a really hard day for me. And I think that like when we were having that conversation, it was just like, I get it. I hear you. I see you. And like, we didn't, well, things got a little bit morbid. Let's face it. I was like, oh, when I die, who's going to take my kids for a walk?
But that's part of it. It's part of the process. And I think like, that's part of us being human. And I think we'd be lying to say those thoughts aren't in the back of like our heads, and that there shouldn't be shame to talk about it. I mean, a bad attitude is something to be shameful about, you know? So it's like,
I have a notoriously shitty attitude. My husband tells me every day, he's like, you and your bad attitude. That's why our 3-year-old tells you every day that you're not her best friend. No,
you slice it with sarcasm.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it's like our attitude is huge and our mentality is huge. And I think that one of the things that we can do to keep ourselves strong and like on the right path is just to reach out when we need help and talk to people and listen to people and share our stories. Because like for me, you're one of my best friends. You're bridesmaid in my goddamn wedding. Like we have been through so much. We watch each other grow families, this, that, and the other thing. Have coffee. I complain a little bit. You know, I tell you, oh yeah, I've been having some like weird muscle things going on. And then before we know it, we're having conversations about like this biopsy and this, like, it's like, when did things get so bad?
Yeah.
And then
I think on that note though, like it can also be like moving through this can be so isolating, but also through some of those friendships, sometimes it's like you don't get it till you get it. And it can be like really hard to humor the world when you're carrying something really heavy and other people don't get it. And it's just, you know, and then they're complaining about work. And it's like, I wish I could fucking work a full day right now. You know what I mean? Well, like, it's like priorities change. Yeah.
You shared a couple things on, I think it was TikTok, and you're like, one thing that I did for myself, like with chronic illness, is I got fake eyelashes. And, you know, you kind of start talking about like how we're getting through this. And then in your DMs comes a long lost acquaintance who's sitting in a chemo chair.
Yeah.
And like, share a little bit about that. Like, how did that affect you?
Well, I think it just really, I think it just is part of that space that there's no place to go right now that says, oh, when you're diagnosed, like your key players in it are your doctors, and then your poor spouse or like partners or close friends that have like no fucking clue what's going on, and they're trying to help you, but they don't know how. And it's like, that's most people's experience. So having a place, a space to share and to vent and to also identify sameness, likeness, like to see your humanity reflected in others that are going through the same struggles, I think is so important. But also I think there's just not enough of it right now. People don't know where to go. And I think when you can share and sometimes be vulnerable and sometimes put your dirty laundry out there, some people are going to hate it and unfollow or ignore, but there's going to be other people that resonate with it and say, holy shit, they're going through it too. I would have had no idea.
So
stores and like
there's this realtor from my previous brokerage, and her and I had connected like very passively. Like, she's a great girl. I think she's an amazing professional, and like professionally she's crushing it. And I don't know how we ended up in the DMs, and I had switched brokerages, and she was like, hey, like, why did you leave? The one I was with before was quite expensive. I was in a very like high paced environment, a lot of pressure, and shit hit the fan. And I needed out. I could not afford to pay my monthly brokerage fee and recover at the same time. Like that is the reality of my situation. So I had to make some changes. So she's like, why did you leave? Like, what is your plan? So in that moment, I decided, you know what, I'm going to be fucking honest. Like my natural instinct was to say, I just wanted to make more money, or, you know, like some fluffy excuse. But like at this moment, I decided to dial in some honesty and just say, like, I'm kind of like, I'm having some health concerns and I need to focus on me. And my high stress job is not doing it. So I need to reposition my business a little bit.
Yeah.
And then I was taking the kids at a day home for the best summer ever and blah, blah, blah. But then the next thing you know, she's telling me I'm currently being treated for breast cancer. I just got diagnosed. And I thought, what? You're crushing it. How on earth can you be getting cancer treatment? Like, wow. It was just one of those things that I was just like, you too?
Yeah.
And then in that moment, like, we had this whole new bond because now we've gone through the testing, and I was freaking out about a test I had coming up, like a PET scan. I don't know what that is, but I know that one of the things that they're looking for is a C word. And that terrified me to the core. And she was telling me about her experiences. And then I'm in like hospital treatment. She goes, wow, your treatment's so much more aggressive than mine. Oh, sorry, you have breast cancer and they're running a harder treatment on me? Like, what? And all of a sudden we're like bonding over this. And don't get me wrong, I don't have time to bond with 100 people in the DMs like every week. Like, that's not my goal here. Let's make that clear. We'll get some resources set up for that. But I'm trying to run a business too, people. But like, all of a sudden there was just somebody who understood what it was like to be trying to keep her business running, trying to keep the show going. But oh my God, like the amount of the sitting duck on the surface, it's all cool. She would have assumed I was healthy. Business is great. Like, so excited. And then there's my little duck feet just going. And she's the same. She's another duck. Like, it was so nice to be able to relate to somebody that just like asks stupid questions or have anybody understand what it's like to give blood twice a week or 3 times a week. How many vials is the most amount of vials you've ever had?
Like, I love that our texts are like, I gave 11 today. What about you?
11 just vials. Dropped off 8 vials of blood.
Cassie, tip, drink lots of water before you go for blood work. Like, this is the information we're sharing with each other. Like, make sure you're super hydrated so it's not as painful and they get all the blood they need. Like,
exactly.
No, and I think it just, that's it. And there's people like, you feel how isolating and scary these situations can be for anybody, and then to not have community behind it, like that's probably one of the biggest things. So if you're looking for community, you can check us out on myinvisibledisease.com and sign up for our newsletter. We also have a Facebook group called My Invisible Disease, so you can check us out there. Join to share your journey, but the difference is, I think so many people keep it quiet because we don't want to burden others with our experience. And it's like,
burden us. Come on over. Like, we want to hear from you. We want to share with you. We want you to feel seen, because
and that's it. It's not a burden. Like, it's when you can share your truth, it's empowering. People see you authentically. And that's when connections are made. That's when those true heart, compassion, empathy, the true connections are made. And it's sharing your truth, it's sharing your experience. And it just, we want to create a space where people can stop hiding, and it's not burdening and it's not stressing, and you don't have to worry about people ignoring and going on their day and it feeling hurtful.
Also, nobody understands what it's like to be fucking stuck on a toilet. Like, I know you can go potty all by yourself, but I'm not a big girl. So, there's a level of, we're the only ones that get it. Like,
yeah, well, but I mean, like after hysterectomy and different things like that, I thought I was going to shit out my vagina. Like, but there are experiences where other people can relate, maybe just in a different way. It brings us back to being human. But like, as I say, we're more than just this physical body. And so, yeah.
Yeah, we're more than our invisible disease. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Hey mamas, we see you. And we want you to join our Facebook community where we can connect and continue the conversation.
Join our private Facebook group at My Invisible Disease, because no one should go through this alone.
Thank you for listening, and check us out at myinvisibledisease.com.